Welcome to Easy Peasy Books, From Author to Authority, the lively and engaging podcast for business professionals who've always believed they have a book in them. I'm your host, Jillian Whitney. Join me as I chat with authors and industry experts from all around the world to explore simple strategies to write, publish, and leverage your business book. Whether you're an entrepreneur, executive, or an employee, this podcast is for you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Allen Clayton. I am here with my dear friend, Jillian Whitney. I'm so happy to do this because Jillian has been working on a book launch for a Kindle product, and I have been writing a Kindle book, and we've both been sharing, I guess, experiences, some good, some bad. And so we're doing this, we're pre-recording it because both of us have run across things and we just want to share what our experience is. A lot of times you hear people say, oh, just write a Kindle book, take a blog post or dictate something, take a blog post, throw it up on Kindle. It'll take you 2 hours. It's a miracle. And we are here to say, not in our experience.
Takes a village, and it takes planning.
Yes.
We're kind of giving everybody the tips that we wish we knew going back in our time machine. So we figured this would just be kind to get this information, especially too, because it's fresh in our brains.
Absolutely. And so the way it's going to work, it's going to be just a casual conversation, but I'm going to share a little bit about the writing process and what it's like to write a Kindle book. And then Jillian's going to take over with the marketing and the uploading and what they've learned on Amazon. So I started writing a book just after the pandemic started. I had more than 100 blog posts, and I thought it would just be a great project to pull out the best ones, rearrange them, and just share with people kind of some of the how-tos, because my blog posts are very actionable. And I spent maybe 2 months doing that, I guess. And then then it was ready to be edited. And that was at the beginning of July. And I was so excited. I really worked hard on this book. I thought it was great. I hired my son to be my editor. And my son is good at English and editing. We've worked together on some projects. He also has an MBA in entrepreneurship. So I knew that he could also look at some of the information just from another critical eye. So you need an editor. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what kind of editors there are and then how I worked with my son. So the first type of editor is a developmental editor. And they look at the purpose of the book and the structure of the book and sort of the overarching goals. And are you achieving them? And this is a really good thing to do at the beginning of a project. If you're writing nonfiction, a developmental editor will help you with your character development and your scenes and sort of making sure everything makes sense. But from a nonfiction viewpoint, they can do that as well. So I gave this book to my son on July 3rd. I thought he was going to get back to me, and tell me how brilliant I am, right? For the first time in his life, I'm brilliant. And that did not happen. And what he said was that the book sounded like I'd just taken a bunch of blog posts and kind of mushed them together. And there wasn't a clear thesis. There wasn't a clear progression. It just was not great. And that was really good information to have. And he was actually right. But just if you're writing a Kindle book or any kind of book and you get feedback like that, it hurts. Right? It's like someone criticizing your baby. And so anyway, I was so, I guess, disappointed. I knew he was right, which was great. But I also just felt like I had been kicked in the stomach. Like I thought it was done. I thought I was going to have to change a few things. And it was actually so bad in his opinion that he only went through the first chapters, gave me his feedback and said, can you rewrite this? Yeah, not great. So that's a developmental editor, right? They're kind of looking at, does the book accomplish what you say? What are you trying to do? And then the second kind is a content editor. And what a content editor does is look at what's in your book to see if it makes sense. So, is the flow right? Are you writing to one audience or many? Now, my book had an issue here too because it was kind of a textbook on being a solopreneur. It was kind of a memoir. It was kind of self-help. So it didn't really have a clear audience, and it didn't have really a clear theme. So that's something a content editor can help you with. And then things like, do the chapter headings make sense? Do you have lists in the right place? One of the things that came up over and over in the editing was I gave a lot, he felt too many examples. So I would give, I'd do a paragraph and then I'd give 8 examples. And he felt I only needed 3. So that's kind of what a content editor does. And they also look at, maybe you're repeating words. I tend to use the word however way more than I need to use. Another thing that he did was that the Solopreneur Academy is for women. And my examples were all for women. My descriptions were all for women. And so I was getting snarky comments from my son, the man, like, who are you trying to appeal to here? So that's a content editor, and that's a really valuable thing. And then a copy editor. So the copy editor is kind of like the grammar police. And there are 2 widely accepted formats for writing. One is called the Chicago Manual of Style, and one is called the Associated Press style. And a copy editor is somebody who lives and breathes these books. Now, this is the Associated Press style book. It's 600 or 700 pages. And as you can see, it's just beautiful, right? They're so hard to read. They're really hard to read. And then the Chicago Manual of Style is even thicker. It's more than 1,000 pages. It's more than 1,100 pages. And again, just dense, right? Dense, dense, dense. So a copy editor is somebody that knows, do you put the comma after 2 items and before and or? Do you use a hyphen or 2 dashes? When do you use ellipses? What syntax? Like all that kind of stuff. And it also lays out how you set up your chapter headings and all the other headings. And so, if you're doing a level 3 subheading, then maybe only the first word is capitalized. But if you're doing a chapter heading, maybe all the words are capitalized. That's the kind of stuff a copy editor knows, and that's what they do. And then the 4th type of editing is a proofreader. And that is just the last overview of your book after you've done everything. I forgot to mention a copy editor will also help you with your graphics and your charts and your tables. So if you don't really know where to place them, what makes sense, they will help you deal with things like that. And they'll also help you with citations and references. And then a proofreader is just that last stitch go over of your book. Sometimes spell check doesn't check everything. Sometimes you're fixing something and you break another word, like just all that stuff. And so that is what a proofreader does. And being edited is kind of hard, right? This last do-over on my book. So the way I did it was I printed it off the first time and I just wanted to show you. So this is number 1. And it's more than 200 pages, or draft number 1. It's more than 200 pages of 12-point type. It is a big 75,000 word book. It's big. So the way we did the editing was we used Google Docs, and I just gave my son the ability to add comments. And when I got the last one back, he had 1,500 comments. And I can't describe what a daunting task that is to get that many comments back. A lot of them were maybe punctuation or it's sort of easy stuff to fix, but there was a lot that he didn't like that. And if you haven't written a book before, done a lot of writing, when you actually create a chapter and you're thinking about the beginning and the middle and end, and you're thinking about your points and you're thinking about your examples, and then you have somebody come along and go, this is terrible, or I don't like this. It's not just a matter of deleting the first paragraph. A lot of times
That
there's
makes sense.
right, there's a lot of rewriting. And I just wanted to share this comment with you because it kind of gives you an idea. I'm not sure that a paid non family member would do this, but they so one of the chapters was on marketing, and Jillian and I both refer to the field of dreams method of marketing, right? And it's based on a movie of the same name with Kevin Costner. And he's out in a cornfield one day and he just hears this voice, build it and they will come. And he builds this baseball diamond. And at the end of the movie, he has all these ghosts of baseball players past come into the and yeah, it's a great movie. So, but a field of dreams approach to marketing is basically you have this idea and you think you're going to build it or you're going to write the book or you're going to, create the website or the prototype and people will come. And the truth is that you need to do marketing. So this is the comment he made on the first paragraph. And I was so excited about this example. What this is a fine recap of a famous movie. At least I assume it's fine since I've never seen it. What this isn't something that gets me excited about sales and marketing, something that convinces me that you know what you're talking about and I should keep reading, something that mentions sales, marketing, or anything about being a solopreneur. So that's the kind of feedback you get when you write a book, right? And it hurts. But it makes it a better book. And of all the comments he gave me, 99.9% of them were on point. And so that's what an editor does. An editor makes it a better book. An editor gives you a fresh perspective. And sometimes those examples that we absolutely love actually take away from the book. So that's a long way of saying use an editor. The second thing I wanted to say is in terms of formatting. And I know Jillian will appreciate this when we get there, but take some time to understand styles. Do not write your book using Times Roman 12, and every time you get to a heading, you make it Times Roman 14 and bold it. Go into the style area of Google Docs or Microsoft Word, and it's very easy to do. It's just a matter of you kind of highlight it and you choose a style. But what that lets you do is a couple things. And when you give it over to the person, my book is being printed as well, so it's going to be laid out. When you give it over to the book designer, they can just go into the Adobe program and change the fonts, do whatever they need to do. Because when you're doing it manually, it's just adding an incredible amount of work for them.
Someone's going to later.
Yeah. So style sheets are incredibly important. And like I said, we used comments just in a Google document. And then to keep track of things for me, if I wanted an example or wanted to reference a different chapter or something like that, I would just change the font color to red. And that way I could skim through. And then the other thing about a developmental editor, this one says, Dear Mom. But they will give you usually a report telling you what needs to be done. And so some of the little things, change this to a capital. We don't like a comma here. That's fine. But he had several suggestions of chapters that needed to change orders, chapters that needed to be combined, things that didn't quite make a lot of sense. So that's the kind of thing that they'll usually give you a document and you can just go through and kind of change things. So that's the writing process, and it can be daunting. Writing a book is huge, but I think that people need to know the writing process is just the first part of the process. Editing, I can't even tell you how much longer. I think I've spent maybe 3 times as long editing as I did actually putting the book together, and I'm not finished. And so editing is big. And then, of course, then you have to move on to uploading it to Kindle, getting it to your publisher, however you want to do that. And then
marketing it. marketing it to your audience. It's funny, as you were talking, I just kind of had this like where it's kind of like having a baby. It's like the beginning is like how we get pregnant, the wine and the dancing and all that jazz. And then the caring of the baby, that's the editing part. It's that long 9 months, and it gets harder and harder as you kind of go, your feet swell, all this stuff that happens when you're pregnant is like the editing process. And then the birthing process, that's kind of the marketing. That's like where the miracle happens to like, all of a sudden it's like you go from carrying this like, what is this, to like, wow, it's a miracle. It's a little baby. And that's kind of like what the books are. So it's kind of the same thing. So you can't just say, well, you write it up and, oh, I clicked on a typewriter for 10 days and I had a book. That doesn't happen.
And
There's so much more to it.
And I have to say there is a difference between the baby, because the baby is going to come. But with the book, it can be very demoralizing, and you can
How many people stop? How many people must stop?
they must, because I know that for me, I have not wanted to stop, but I definitely have felt overwhelmed with the task of getting this to market. So it is just, I don't think there is a quick write it in a weekend way that you can do this well. And I read a lot. I read a lot of Kindle books, and you can tell what book has been thrown together from a blog post and what books have really been thought out and
Sure.
and shared. So
True. And it's interesting. I got a free book the other day, like you're on people's mailing lists and they're like, oh, I'm, sending out my book and this and that. And it was actually about making Kindle books. So I went, okay, it's free. What the heck, right? And I downloaded it, and I was reading some of the actually, I was about to download it, and I was reading some of the comments, and the comments were terrible. The reviews were terrible. And they just said, after the after the first chapter, there were so many typos, I couldn't even read this. And I thought, do you really want that stain forever out there? It's kind of like not cool.
I read a book the other day too, and I was really interested in the subject matter, and the way it was formatted was terrible. It had 3 sections, 3 or 4 sections, but there were no chapter numbers, and then the chapters had subsections, and it
Got lost.
it got lost. Like, I think it was a really good book, but if they had had someone look at it from the point of view of the reader and just say, "Can you go back and label these paragraphs, maybe number the bullet points?" But it was a mess. And Kindle, I mean, I like real books anyway, but Kindle, you don't have that opportunity to kind of flip back and go, "Oh," I mean, you can, but it's harder.
It's not the same. It's not the
So, putting the thought and the organization at the beginning, both with what is the purpose of this book? How are we going to structure it? And that was the real mistake I made, that I did not build this book from the ground up like I have my other books. I decided to just, start with what I already had. And in hindsight, that cost me a lot of time. So, yeah. So start out, be organized, know your points, know your reader, know what you want to achieve, and let's turn it over to marketing.
Okay. So you talked about being organized. So I just want to throw in sort of that intermediary thing of, as you're going through the writing phase, the editing phase, the document management, and that's my strength of my background from tech writing. Document management is so important so that you do stay on track of what version you're at. Because with one of my clients, everything was good to go until she had other people helping. So she wasn't doing it all herself. She had other people doing stuff. But then when it was finally in the PDF, the sort of early reviewers, early readers were looking at everything, there was chunks that were missing. And it was just like, oh, now there's a scramble to get that. How did that happen? So it's like you're like somewhere between revision 3 and revision 5, something happened and it got ripped out and now you got to throw it back. But then, like you said, if you have this team of editors where you have your developmental and your copy and your proofreading, well, then technically you really should go back to the beginning again to see, does this make sense? Maybe not so much the developmental, but at least the copy reader, the copywriter and the copy editor and
Mhm.
the looking for the typos, because you could have just added in stuff and, made a mess. So those are just really important things. Document management is so important. So at this point, we're going to just say you have your final manuscript. It's been through your editor, your 4 editors. It's good to go. You've got everything you want and you're ready to upload it to Amazon. And there's all sorts of great tools. People range from using just Microsoft Word to, I like Scrivener, but it's kind of one of those things where you have to kind of like really stay on top of it. So I'm having to go back and learn Scrivener myself. But there's so many tools that you can use. But essentially, you get to a point where you upload it to Amazon. It's a Kindle book. And now you can either just release it and have crickets. And I know a lot of people that have done that. I recently met somebody on LinkedIn who wrote a really, really good book and it only had like 2 reviews. And we are living in a time of social proof and reviews are really, really important. So there's some things that you can do when you are getting ready to launch a book to put you in a better position. And that's when you call in marketers like me. And one of the things is, before you even upload your book, you want to figure out what categories your book should be in. That is crucial. And sometimes, you have to really think about, is there even a market for this book? You could have the best book in the world, but if nobody's really looking for it, that's something to think about. But anyways, going back to categories, you want to find categories for your book so that people could be typing something in or browsing. Because nowadays, it's COVID. We're not browsing in bookstores. We're browsing through Amazon. And people, they will type keywords into Amazon, but sometimes they will click through categories. And so you want to find a good category for your book to reside in. And the nice thing about Amazon is you don't have to pick just one. It looks like you can pick 2 at the beginning. But there's actually some secret sauce where you can actually add in more. But I'm going to talk about, there's 2 tools that you might want to look at, anybody who's doing a Kindle book. One is called KDP Rocket. That's the piece of software. You have to buy these. These are not free tools. But KDP Rocket is really good because it allows you to have keywords, find keywords, and it also allows you to find categories where you can see, number one, how much money are people making in this category? So it gives you an idea of even what you should be pricing your book at. If you find that like you're writing a book about crocheting, I don't know, hats for cats or something like that, and you're going to make your book, $10.99, and you find out all the other books are $3.99, you might want to rethink it. So it helps you with pricing. It also helps you find categories that are ethical. You don't ever want to try and stick your book in a category that has nothing to do, because you're upsetting the reader. They're not finding it in the right place. So you always want to pick ethical categories. But you want to find categories that, number one, don't require too many sales in order to be a bestseller, because you'd like to be a bestseller, because then Amazon will show you love. You can get that bestseller badge, put it on your website, put it on your book, all sorts of different things. So you always want to be a bestseller. And then the second thing is you also want to be in a category that is not too competitive, because as independent book publishers, we're fighting Penguin and Harper, all these different places that have like a team of people. You're usually just a couple people doing your book, so you want categories that are not too competitive. So KDP Rocket is one I like to use, does categories and keywords. There's another tool called Kindle Spy, and it is also good. I own both, so I go back and forth. I just find KDP Rocket easier to use. I keep forgetting how to use KDP Spy. It's just, I can't keep it in my head. But those are 2 really, really good tools. So you go and you do your research and you find your categories that you want to use, and they're competitive and they're not too competitive, and you got a chance of being a bestseller because it'll tell you specifically you got to sell 24 copies in one day and you will be like the number one person. You're like, wow, that's pretty good. And it will even tell you, what if you just want to be number 10? They'll even say, okay, well, then you got to sell 3. They give you that idea so that you can be in the top 10 and hopefully maybe the top 1. One of the things that is also really, really important is about the cover of a book. And, we talk about don't judge a book by its cover. You know what? We do. We do judge a book. We do judge a book by its cover. And also, too, you have to remember your book is showing up alongside of all the other books. So you just want to make sure, is the font big and does it stand out? Can I see what the book's about? Is it a pleasing cover? Is it attractive? So it's really, really important. So many of us want to do our own cover. We have Canva and we think we can and this and that. Really get a professional. I know you've had a professional do your covers. Your covers are gorgeous. So just remember that is so important because people do judge it, and it's eye candy. It's eye candy.
And also, we're looking at it a lot of times, we're scrolling on our phone.
Oh,
So the old covers were meant for you to go to Barnes and Noble and it didn't matter really what the font size was or the color because you're touching it, you're opening it, you're reading the back. Now we're used to scrolling and scanning, and those little, it might look pleasing to you. Like, I don't really like the look of covers where it's all words, right? But that's what we get now because the little tiny fonts you just can't read on your phone.
you can't. You can't.
And you need good contrast, and like it's really, I've had them done on Fiverr. When I started, I think it was $5 for a cover and then a tip. Now the person I use charges 20. But it's so
It's worth nothing. If you think about it, that's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing. So covers are important, and also too, social proof is so important. You have to have reviews, or else people are like, "What's wrong with this book?" It's just our natural thing. I know when I go to buy anything on Amazon, the first thing I look at is who else has reviewed it. If there's only 4 reviews for a webcam versus like 3,000, I'm going to buy the one with 3,000. It's just we trust our peers, and other Amazon customers are peers. So we do trust what other people have to say. So my marketing tip for getting reviews, you want to get your reviews before you actually launch the book. And you're just like, wow, how does that work? So what you can do is you can give a pre-release of your book to other people. And that's best done as a PDF. Don't send them to Kindle. You want them to actually have read your book, or at least a portion. Your book is large. So it's possible that people would say, I don't have I can't do this all in a week or something like that. But you can say to them, go through it, read a couple chapters, get a feel for the book. It's not a novel, so you don't have to read to the very end and get the cliffhanger. With a nonfiction book, you can kind of browse, you can read a chapter here and there, and you can really get a feel for the book. So if you give people a PDF in advance, you ask them to be part of your early reader team. And you can, send out an email to your email list if you have a good size email list, or your friends, or just anybody that you know of, your colleagues, or, get a bunch of people on LinkedIn. It doesn't really matter who you target. Just ask them, would you be willing to read my book? Give it to them a week in advance, give them a PDF copy, and then walk them through how to give a review. Because you know what? Most people don't know how. They don't even know how. Like, they don't know, well, what do I do? You have to say, go to the page, click here, do this, do that. And there's all these things. Like, first of all, you have to have bought the book. You can't read a book unless you bought it. So we'll talk about how to help them in a second. But also too, you have to have your own Amazon account, and you have to have purchased $50 worth of products within the last year. So you have to have an active Amazon account. And this is Amazon just trying to stop people from gaming the system of like, oh, I'll get a bunch of reviews by getting a bunch of people in another country to all sign up for Amazon and write a great review. Amazon's just trying to make it ethical. And I appreciate that. I appreciate
I
that.
think I do too. I have to say, when I wrote my first book back in 2013, I wasn't I was not as knowledgeable as I am now, and I thought, "Oh, I'll just go on and post reviews," and I made up, like, Google accounts for my pets, and nope, nope. They want, and sometimes they don't even, you do legitimate reviews and they don't accept them.
Oh, and it's heartbreaking. I know that happened to my sister. She wrote a review the other day and it got bounced. And she was like, I don't she sent me the email. She says, I don't even understand why they bounced me. And she had, of course, a valid Kindle account. She had bought everything. They said that she had not used appropriate language. And she was just like, I have no idea what I did wrong. And
Wow.
I read it. I had no idea either. But the crazy thing is there's no way to appeal. You can't rewrite the review. You're out. It's like there's no three strikes. It's one strike. You're done. No more reviews on that particular item. And
Wow.
that was kind of like, that's a little brutal. So I didn't think that was fair. So you have to be careful about how you write reviews. You're not reviewing the people. So it's like if I was to go review your book, Sue, I couldn't say, Sue's a great gal. I've known her for 10 years and she's fun and we have great webcasts and blah, blah, blah. I have to talk about your book and what what was the insights that I gained from your book? Why would I recommend it to other people? I have to be specific about the book and not the author. So that's something that's really important. And also to help your early readers understand how to write reviews. Just give them some tips about, you want to talk about this, you want to keep it formal. Don't mention, oh, I just love that person. Stick to the book, make it formal, yada, yada, yada. So, one thing that we recommend is that if people are going to take the time and trouble to read your book in advance, post a review, hopefully, what you want to do is if you're a new author, Sue, you could probably get away with not having to do this because you're an established author, but anybody who is a first time author, it really is kind if you can give people that book for free. Now, there is a gifting option with Amazon, but you're not allowed to gift a book in exchange for reviews. There's, again, part of Amazon's credibility. So, what you have to do is you have to make your book free, not just for the reviewers. You have to make it free to the entire world. And you're like, I put all this work into my book and now it's going to be free. So that's something that you need to just get over and say, okay, but if you do this before you officially launch, chances are most people are not going to find your book. And if they do find your book, who cares? Let them have it. It's not a big deal. And another thing about reviewing, you can't tell people they have to give you a review. So you can say, I'd like you to read my book. If you enjoyed it and you'd recommend it, I'd love if you give me a review, but you can't say, I gave you the book. Now you owe me. There can be nothing like that. So that's really important. Now, the question is, so how do you make your book free? Because that's not an option on Amazon. The option on Amazon is the lowest you can do is make your book 99 cents. And that was another thing that was really difficult when we were setting the royalties, because that's something too that we haven't even addressed, that there's two types of royalties with Amazon. There's the 70% and the 35%. And based on that is a different pricing of your book. So we were setting our account up with my client. They were setting their account up for 70% royalties because their book is eventually going to be $8.99. And I said, but we want to, when we launch to the world, we want to launch it at 99 cents. But for our early readers, we're going to make it free. So now we have three prices we're juggling. How do you do this? Amazon does not really give you the instructions. So what we ended up doing was we said, let's start it at 99 cents, which meant we had to go with the 35% royalty. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then in order to make that book free, you have to use what's called the Kindle promotion. And you get 5 days where you can make your book free within the first 90 days. And then I think you maybe get another 90 days, but the promotions are for 90 days at a time. And you can do them all at the beginning, you can do them all at the end, you can intersperse them however you want. So we went, okay, we got 5 days. So we set it for 2. So here's all the crazy things about Amazon. First of all, your book has to already have been uploaded, and on the second day, that's when you can start your first promotion.
Okay.
So you have to work. So you can't upload your book and say, okay, great, I'm going to set the promotion. Doesn't work that way. You can't even start a promotion until the second day. Then when you go to start the promotion, you find out that there's this like 24-hour clock that you always have to wait. So if you upload your book on day 1, then day 2 is when you can start doing the promotion, but you can't do then you have to have 24 hours. So it's almost like until day 4. So you have to kind of factor in all that math, especially if you're letting people know, hey, I'm launching a book on, December 1st. You got to figure all that math out in advance. So that's really hard. And then another thing about the promo is once you start the promo clock going, it locks and you can't get back in until it ends. And what happened with us is we, uploaded. We thought we were going to just start the clock right away. And we went, oh, crud. Now we know we have to wait a couple days. So we got it going. And then we found out there was an error in the book. And we had to re-upload the book again. And everything on Amazon takes time. It takes time for it to republish and upload it and yada, yada, yada. So by time that was all done, our clock expired. So we had to run the clock again. And of course, that means we used up 2 days. And we ran the clock and ended up, we just had to kill all the promos the first week, which we did. But, works out okay. But those are the little things that they're really not listed anywhere. You just kind of have to, it's kind of like getting those extra 6 categories. That's not listed anywhere either.
And that's why sometimes just hiring somebody to do it makes sense. I wanted to ask you about timelines, because I know that you had, you had this launch all planned out. And did you just talk a little bit about the timeline, and did you create it with the client? What did it include? Just kind of to give people a sense of what the planning process was like, because I have to admit, for my book, I'm so focused on getting it done and getting it to the person who is laying it out. I haven't even, and it's taken me way longer than I expected. So I'm not even thinking beyond finishing the book. So yeah, how did you do the timeline? Did you use something fancy to create it, like, Trello, or how did you do it? And how did you convey it to clients?
So it's much easier if you're in control of the timeline yourself. If I was working with a client and the client had a specific date they wanted to go live.
Okay.
That is very, very hard, because it's like a domino. If one thing doesn't fall into place, then everything has to shift. You cannot, just drive faster on the way. You can't make it up along the way because there's all these glitches. And this was our first time. So it was really hard and we did not meet the timeline. So basically the thing to think about is, number 1, you have a 30-day window with Amazon. So this is really important to keep in mind with when you are ready to go. So once you upload the book, your clock is started with Amazon. So you have 30 days. Within those 30 days, that's when Amazon is going to give you the most organic love. And that's when you want to try and get to be a bestseller or a best new release. And Amazon is kind of like rooting for you. And they're going to continue to keep showing your book in front of people. And then after the 30 days, Amazon says, take out an ad now. We're done helping you. So you don't want to waste your 30 days by uploading it going, I didn't do the table of contents right. And downloading it again and all these kind of things. So it's almost as if like you have to kind of have your own mental timeline of here's when my book will be done. So I would recommend two timelines. One of getting your book absolutely perfect and pristine and ready to be uploaded. So you go with that date and then back it out. And, it's not dependent on anything. And then once your book is perfect, that's when I'd look up and say, when would be a good day to launch this book? And the timeline that I would put forward is figure out that you probably want to send it out to early readers, give them a week. So this was our timeline. We sent out an email to an email list, to the client's email list. And we said, we're looking for early readers. Is anybody interested? And we waited a couple of days. We got lots of people raising their hands. We had like over 60 people that raised their hands that they wanted to be early readers. We said, great, we're going to send you a PDF. And then we gave them a week to read the PDF so that they could kind of go through it. And then we had it set in our timeline that after that week, that's when we would upload the book to Amazon. We knew the book would be perfect, pristine, no more changes. Now it's just really about getting it up to Amazon. So I would recommend, probably give your readers a week and a half.
Right.
After a week, get that book uploaded. Now the Amazon clock is running, but you're always going to have tweaks those first couple of days. It's not going to be quick. So, give yourself that 72 hours.
Okay.
Get that book in at 99 cents. Do that 35% promo, for yourself, royalty for yourself, so that you can download it, upload it, have a couple people try it for you. Then set your promo going in time for your early readers to get 2 days with, so they can get a free book. They can now do a verified review.
Okay.
And then after that, stop and have it now go to 99 cents and then release it to the world. And we're doing a release of, I would recommend 3 days. We're doing 4, but I would recommend 2 to 3 days of 99 cents to the world so that you can blast it out on social media because they love a deal. People love a deal. And with Amazon, when you release your book, you become a hot new release. Luckily, if there's lots of downloads and stuff. And there's 2 categories, top paid and top free. So we hit the top free right away, which was great. But it's like you're getting in the algorithm for Amazon, but now you want to now bump up and be in the top paid because free is free. The free sales don't count towards being a bestseller. They kind of get it going, but they're not. You've got to have the real sales. So then that's why you want to introduce it 99 cents for a couple of days. You let everybody know, get that book at 99 cents, and then boom, you get up into the bestsellers list. And you want to be in at least the top 10 for at least one category. Then you are a bestseller. And then Amazon, you get the badge and, all that sort of stuff. So as you can see, there's quite a series of steps, every step of the way. So I really feel you want to have, is my book production ready? And then, okay, now it's ready. Maybe I got to wait a month, like we launched a book the week of the election. Like, oh my gosh, you can't talk about a worse week to go. But, and you might not want to release Christmas week. And, so you have to kind of really look at what's going on in the world. Is this a good time? People tax. I wouldn't want to release a book on like April 15th in a normal non-COVID.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things you want to look at. We used a program called Same Page, only so that many of us could be sort of working together, all doing different things. And we did press releases. You want to try and time it and get on some podcasts and, different things. So we did like a PR press release for our clients. We got that shot out to the world. We've got her booked for a couple of different podcasts. She's also been booked for podcasts. We did a LinkedIn Live, all sorts of different things. So we did Same Page to literally keep us on the same page. I'm not 100% thrilled with the software, so not I'm not sold on that one yet, but you need something. You need some sort of project management tool, that's for sure.
And I know we're nearing the top of the hour, so we really are. That went by fast. I just wanted to ask you one more question. In terms of the infrastructure surrounding the book, so I know I vaguely recall on Amazon, there's like an author's page, and then so is that up to date? And then did you have anything in the book that would capture the people's email addresses so that they could maybe become clients or fans of your author client?
Yes. So what we did was we put links to the website. We did not do a free gift to go and get anything. With this book, there's audio files on their website. So they go to the website, but they didn't have to sign up to get those audio files. So that would have been a good idea. Another thing a lot of people do is they actually put a link to their where the page is to buy the book, so that people will go and leave a review so that they click, and it's above and beyond the one that Amazon just naturally puts in for you. You can, you got to nudge people for those reviews all the time. So that's something as well. And one thing I just have to tell you that we're still working on that is very, very difficult is we're finding Amazon is not doing a good job at refreshing. So for instance, I bought the book right away. It's been updated and I don't see the updates. And I've gone in and I've refreshed and done a bunch of things. So that's very disconcerting. People who are buying the book now are getting the book, but I'm stuck with the first.
Wow, interesting. And that just I think that much I know as an author, I'm sick of this. I want it done. I want it up. I don't want to read it again. But I think one of the big takeaways from you is especially with how difficult, challenging, I guess, Amazon is to work with, get it right the first time.
Absolutely. And, get people on your team that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's hard, so you do want to have a book person that does a cover, have somebody who's doing your editors. It literally does take a small team. And someone I know who actually literally went through and said how much he spent when he published his book on every part of the process, just so that you could see the dollar amount. And he goes through and shows you the whole team. And I thought it was very good and very realistic because really, if you sometimes you can't just do it all yourself. I don't know if I could do all this myself.
Oh, the thought of uploading something, even that little piece again to Amazon and laying out a book and would require learning InDesign. And like, it's just not much as I love DIY stuff. Yeah. And what you're telling me just makes me not even want to do it. The more I
But I think the one takeaway and the one sort of that silver lining here is you don't have to be chosen. We are done with the days where you had to go find a publisher and an agent and this and that. Literally, even if you just go do it yourself and you don't have reviews, you still get your book out there. And I think that it's leveled the playing field so that ordinary people, if you have a story, I believe we all have a book in us. And if you have it, you can get it out to the world. And even if it's just your mom buys it, it's awesome.
well,
It's any good thing.
and it gives you so much credibility. So even if worst case you throw up a Kindle book that is terrible, has a bad cover, isn't edited, is confused. But when at the bottom, when you send an email to a new client, you can say author of and have a link.
That's right.
So, yeah.
And you can always go back and have a review drive. Like you could go, there's many things that you can do to go back and, even if you published a book, a year ago, you can still go back and say, okay, how can I remarket this book? So it's not like a one and done, like, oh, if I don't do it right in the beginning, I never get it right. No, you can still go back and do it. And one secret thing that we did was with this book, we did a trailer. We did a book trailer. And that's also a really cool thing, especially if you put it on YouTube, because if you put it on YouTube, then it gets on Google.
That's a good idea. So much. Thank you, Jillian. I am just so impressed with the amount of work that is done behind the scenes. And I think it's really exciting. I think it's so exciting for all of us to have this opportunity. It was extremely helpful. So thank you for joining me. Good luck with your client's book. And I'm going to use a lot of what you've told me to market my book when I get there. So
Awesome.
thank you for being with us, Jillian. Bye-bye.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Easy Peasy Books, From Author to Authority. If you found value in today's episode, I'd be grateful if you could leave us a review. It helps other aspiring authors discover our podcast. To learn more about writing, publishing, and leveraging your business book, visit my website at easypeasybooks.com.